The morning sun failed to break through the thick grey clouds pressing down on Stony Lake. The water was flat, dark and still, reflecting the gloom of the sky. David stood at the helm of his boat, his fingers locked around the rod handle. His knuckles were white, the skin stretched tight against the bone. He did not look at the other boats. He looked only at the water, scanning the surface for the slightest ripple that might betray a hidden shoal. Around him, the tournament fleet began to wake. Engines sputtered, then roared, the sound vibrating through the hull of his boat and into his feet. The noise was a physical weight, a constant, low-frequency thrum that made the air feel electrified. David took a slow, deep breath, tasting the damp, metallic scent of the lake. He checked his line one last time, the tension in his shoulders mirroring the tautness of the braided cord. Every boat around him was a competitor, every engine roar a challenge to his resolve. He shifted his weight, feeling the boat rock beneath him, and braced his feet against the deck. He was ready. He was waiting. Bill stood on the shore, his voice booming through the speakers, cutting through the heavy air. "On your marks, get set, go fish!" A sharp blast of the horn tore across the lake. The water erupted instantly. A frenzy of white spray kicked up as dozens of engines hit full throttle at once. Lake churned. David gunned it. Boat lurched, pinning him. He carved spray, his eyes locked on the horizon, ignoring the roar of the competition behind him. He steered with precision, reading the shifting patterns of the water. He pushed deeper into the open water, leaving the initial cluster of boats to battle in the churn. He was clear of the pack, the engine humming a steady, aggressive rhythm. On the shore, the race was a distant, chaotic dance of white spray. Henry stood motionless, his eyes pressed against the rubber cups of his high-powered binoculars. He watched the boat's dark shape slice the waves. A sudden gust of wind whipped across the grass, flattening the reeds and sending a shiver through the spectators. Henry's brow furrowed. He lowered the binoculars, his gaze shifting to the darkening clouds rolling over the lake. "The wind is picking up," Henry muttered. "The fish will be heading deep." Shinji nodded, his expression hardening. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small weighted lure, turning it over in his palm. "My minnow design will handle it," Shinji replied. "The air pockets in the ballast are balanced for this exact pressure. It will stay stable even at depth." They stood in silence, the wind tugging at their frames as they tracked the boat moving toward the quiet, murky water near the reeds. Now it was up to David. Engine died. David drifted into reeds. The silence was sudden and heavy, broken only by the gentle lap of water against the fiberglass hull. He stood still, letting the boat lose its momentum. He scanned the water, watching for the subtle swirls that signaled movement below the dark, stagnant layer. He reached for the rod, his movement slow and deliberate. He checked the line, ensuring the tension was perfect, then drew his arm back. He cast. The lure arced through the air and hit the surface with a soft, precise splash, barely disturbing the stillness. He began the retrieve. It was a rhythmic, jerking motion, a calculated imitation of a wounded fish struggling against the current. He pulled the rod tip back, paused, then reeled in the slack. He repeated the sequence, his eyes fixed on the point where the line entered the water. The air around him felt dense, charged with the anticipation. He adjusted his grip, feeling the vibration of the lure through the rod blank. The rhythm was hypnotic until the rod tip snapped downward with a violent, bone-jarring force. David did not hesitate. He slammed his feet against the hull, anchoring his weight as the rod bent into a punishing arc. He gritted his teeth, his forearms corded with tension. and fought to regain control. The fish was heavy, pulling with a raw, rhythmic power. Every muscle in his upper body burned with the effort. He felt the vibration of the struggle travel through the graphite blank, a frantic, pulsing energy. He kept the pressure steady, refusing to give an inch, guiding the beast toward the surface. Suddenly, the water erupted. A flash of silver broke the surface. David lunged, his movements sharp and precise. He scooped the net beneath the thrashing weight and hauled it over the gunwale. The fish hit the deck with a heavy, wet thud. David knelt on the deck, his breath evening out as the adrenaline subsided. He reached down, his fingers tracing the length of the base, and confirmed the catch. He looked up, scanning the open water, his expression one of sharp, focused satisfaction. He turned to secure the net, unaware of the distance between him and the shore. On the bank, the atmosphere was markedly different. Officer Banning sat motionless on a folding chair, his posture rigid. He held a thick manila envelope pressed against his knee, his eyes fixed on the small boat drifting near the reeds. He did not blink. His gaze remained locked on David, narrow and cold. Banning shifted his weight, the chair creaking under the movement, and adjusted his grip on the envelope. He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. Banning raised a hand, pointing a single gloved finger toward the water where David sat. The gesture was sharp, a silent directive. The sound of gravel crunching under heavy boots drew Henry's attention away from the water. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he saw Banning leading the way. Bill trailed slightly behind, his face tight, while Jacob followed with a purposeful, rigid stride. Henry felt the shift in the air immediately. The ambient noise of the tournament seemed to recede, leaving only the sound of the approaching men. Banning is moving in. Shinji turned, his posture stiffening as he tracked the trio. They did not slow down. Banning held the envelope against his side, his gloved hand gripping the edge so tightly the paper crinkled. The officials stopped in a tight semicircle, effectively blocking the view of the lake. Jacob stepped forward. Jacob did not wait for an invitation. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick stack of glossy prints. He fanned them out, holding them directly in front of Henry. The images showed David on the water, his boat positioned near the reeds, the rod bent at a sharp angle. Henry reached out, his fingers trembling as he took the top photo. He squinted, his eyes darting across the frame. He looked up, his face drained of color, the skin around his jaw tightening. "What is this?" Henry demanded, his voice cracking. "This is not what it looks like." Jacob stepped closer, his shadow falling over the photos in Henry's hand. He did not look at the water. He looked only at Henry. "Mr. Dean?" Jacob said, his tone flat. "I am afraid I have to disqualify your grandson." The words hit the air with a finality that silenced the crowd. Henry stood frozen, the photos clutched in his grip. The tournament had ended for David before he even knew the rules had changed. Henry shoved the photos back toward Jacob, his hands shaking. "Look at the angle of the line," he barked, pointing at a blurred section of the print. "That is not a snag. That is a strike. You are framing him." Jacob did not blink. He pulled the photos back, sliding them into the envelope with a rhythmic sliding sound that cut through the wind. Banning stepped forward, his boots heavy on the wooden planks. He reached out and tapped the envelope, his gloved finger leaving a smudge on the paper. "The committee has already reviewed the evidence, Mr. Dean," Banning said, his voice low and devoid of inflection. "The decision is final." Henry turned to Bill, searching for an ally, but the organizer looked away, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The betrayal was absolute. Henry stepped toward Banning. his chest heaving, but Shinji caught his arm, pulling him back. The physical restraint was necessary. Henry looked out at the lake. David was still there, drifting near the reeds, his rod held high, his focus entirely on the water. He was still fishing, still working, completely unaware that his name had been erased from the tournament record.